Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about a brand new studio album from Mantar entitled Pain is Forever and This is the End. And as you can tell from that delightful album title, this thing is every bit as warm and soft and friendly as a hand-woven basket filled with puppy dogs and cotton candy. Mantar have been kicking around for just under a decade now. I even remember reviewing their first demo and their first album on Bring on the Metal way back in the fucking day. I think I've even reviewed a couple of their other albums here in the early days of the Metal Meltdown. It's been a treat to watch them grow and evolve, get heavier, get darker. I love their fusion of hardcore and sludge metal with a little bit of black metal spice and edge. They're not the first band per se to fuse a lot of these elements together, but they are, in my opinion, one of the more interesting and one of the more brutal. Their last two albums of original material, Ode to the Flame and The Modern Art of Setting Ablaze, I thought were fantastic, and even the cover album they did in 2020, Grungetown Hooligans, I thought was legitimately pretty interesting, pretty solid. With all this in mind, I was pretty excited for Pain is Forever and This is the End, especially considering that incredibly bleak, nihilistic, hyper-provocative album title. Holy fucking shit, getting straight to the point right off the goddamn bat. And what immediately impressed me was how much more refined this is in comparison to previous Mantar records, which aren't sloppy by any means, but this feels more full-bodied, and there's a little bit more going on structurally, but it's still really cohesive. A lot of the grunge and alternative rock influences that obviously would have informed Grungetown Hooligans remains intact on here. You know, Mudhoney, Sonic Youth, the Smashing Pumpkins, the Melvins, all that kind of stuff. The black metal spices and the hardcore and the punk and the sludge metal spices are all here as well. The result is something that is moody. The result is something that is really catchy at times, but still really heavy and really oppressive. Whereas previous records, as good as they were ultimately more about just beating you to a pulp. This feels a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more methodical. There's some really great songwriting, some really great production. And while I don't know if I would say this is their best record, I would say that this is their most ambitious record and their most accessible album to date as well. Opening track Egoisto, for instance, is a very anxious, mid-paced kind of hardcore, sludge, post-punk bruiser. It feels like the mutant freak child of late 80s Black Flag and Idols. The way that it painfully drudges around with all of these eerie vocals and sludgy beatdowns and these very simplistic rhythms and hooks even reminds me of a heavier take on Helmet and the Jesus Lizard and some other kind of 90s alternative metal and hardcore. Then you have Hang 'Em Low So the Rats Can't Get 'Em, which is this genuinely bleak and disturbed slice of really dark, moody post-rock and alternative metal and sludge. The singer Eric is fraving like some kind of black metal prophet. I can practically see venom and blood being spat in every single direction. And this adds so much to the atmosphere. This is at times a genuinely uncomfortable track. I would go as far as to say it's the darkest, the spookiest, most uncomfortable track on the record. The only thing that comes close would be maybe the closing number, Odysseus, which completely unapologetically embraces this really dark, fucked up, apocalyptic doom and sludge. It is a very slow-moving, very oppressive cut and a fantastic way to close this thing out. Then you have tracks like Piss Ritual and Orbital Pus, which are genuinely raucous pieces of 90s hardcore and post-hardcore, but with a black metal candy coating and glaze. On the flip side, you have A Frost and Decay, which shows Mantar kind of indulging a bit more in some black metal worship, while still retaining some punky beats and riffs and momentum. All three tracks are dark, gnarly, fucked up, super solid. A Frost and Decay does feel kind of cheeky, almost like a stripped-down Devil Master, but I won't say that they're corny like Devil Master. Not at all. You know what is corny, though? Not like Devil Master, mind you, just corny in general. Grim Reaping. I'm not a fan of this fucking cut. Like, it starts off with some really basic kind of hard rock beats and rhythms. It's got, like, some of the more venomous black metal snarls and sneers. It does evolve into something a little heavier, a little moodier near the very end, but it's still just odd. It's out of place. It's not as cohesive or as well thought out as other tracks on this record. It's not horrible per se, it's just kind of clumsy, you know? Like, if Motorhead ever tried to do like a grunge or an alt metal song, this is probably what it would have sounded like. And yeah, that's not doing much for me. I would also add that there's a little bit of a lull right after Of Frost and Decay and right before Odysseus. The three tracks kind of sandwiched in the middle here. They're not bad, they're pretty well made, but they're definitely not as effective as the other tracks we've talked about. Still though, I'm very impressed by a lot of what I'm hearing on this record. It's very ambitious, very creative, very well put together. Are there some rough spots here and there? Sure, but for the most part, everything comes together in pretty seamless fashion. I love the way all of these influences from alternative rock and alternative metal and hardcore and sludge metal and black metal are all kind of brought together. I like that there's some really great kind of straightforward songwriting anchoring a lot of these songs. I like that it's still dark and brutal. I am going to go with an extremely enthusiastic 3.5 out of 5. Dangerously, catastrophically close to a 4 out of 5, you know? Not every song is a bona fide banger, hence why we're not going for a full 4 out of 5, but I mean, the stuff that hits pretty fucking hard. If you've enjoyed previous Mantar records, I don't see why you wouldn't enjoy this. I do think I still prefer Ode to the Flame and the Modern Art of Setting Ablaze over this record, but I admire what Mantar is trying to do here, and I would be super open to seeing them expand on this style. If you didn't like Mantar before, I would honestly still recommend you check it out, because who knows, maybe these new influences and ideas will be enough to win you over. Once again, an extremely enthusiastic 3.5 out of 5. Who knows, that may change. I feel like this is one of those records that has the potential to really grow on you with time, but for now, I will stand by my score and tell you that this is a really good album, and you should check it out. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.